Hey guys, welcome back to Winding Road Magazine. I'm Tedward, and this is my 1988 Porsche 911 Carrera. It's a 3.2 liter flat six with a G50 5-speed manual gearbox. And I've been out here washing the cars today. I'm certainly no obsessed garage, but I try to keep at least the black car looking somewhat good. It's very difficult to keep this clean, and our water is extremely hard, so if I don't go through it with a nice detail wax drying method, it just looks like crap. So the car currently, as it sits, has about 86,000 miles on it. Clearly not stock. So you've got, appearance-wise, the rough bumpers, the turbo Fuchs, and I've wrapped them in R888Rs, which I got on Tire Rack. There's quite a bit going on suspension-wise. This car was a track rat back in its day. It's always been maintained really well. In fact, the service book on this is absolutely bananas. It's about this thick. That's actually why I bought the car. Inside, we've got Recaro pole positions and likely out of date both seats and harnesses, so I certainly wouldn't do any wheel-to-wheel in this car, but certainly fine for an autocross. And this little half cage, and you're going to notice that's going to make some noise when we get driving. It's not my favorite thing in the world. It looks pretty cool, but it's actually kind of annoying, and the level of safety, being a bolting cage, is debatable. The Wevo 7 shifter, some Redline goodies like that kick plate down on the passenger side, as well as the Redline door cards with the RS door pulls. You'll notice I pretty much always use just the regular seatbelt. It's not a great idea to be using a 6-point harness without a Hans device, because if you are in an accident and you come to a complete stop very quickly, your neck is going to snap forward and you're not going to have any give. At least this is going to give you a little bit of give before your neck, just breaks in half. I don't really want to die in my sports car. That's no fun. Gauges are tilted. I get a lot of comments on that. A lot of people hate it. They say, that's stupid. It makes no sense. Sorry, I've got to move this forward another bit. I was vacuuming it today as well, so I moved everything around. Gauges are tilted. The purpose of the gauges being tilted is to have the red line front and center, top of the dashboard. It makes it a lot easier to maintain and see it when you're driving. It's long gearing, so you're not really approaching red line that often, but it's nice to have. You see it in a lot of the race cars. And then the speedometer, really, it's only rotated, I think, I didn't do this, to match the 0 point of the gauges. So that way when they're both sitting at 0, they match. Coming out of this driveway always tripods a bit. Let's go take it around town. This car has a Steve Wong chip and an M&K cat bypass muffler. So what that does is allows it to breathe a little better, but then the chip really changes the drivability of this engine and makes it a lot more friendly. It's also got a turbo clutch in it, so it should last a little longer because it's designed to hold more torque than the standard car, but we can assume it has somewhere between 200 and 220 horsepower to the rear wheels. This car actually does not have a limited slip differential, which I think is kind of annoying, but honestly, it probably makes the car a little safer. Hopefully you're not an undercover cop. But we've also got quite a bit of oil in this car. So cars are air-cooled, and a lot of people will snarkily say, well, no, they're oil-cooled. No, they're not. They're actually air-cooled. I just did a video on my channel, Tedward Drives, about this, but the primary method of cooling is air. Over each cylinder, there's a jug, and those jugs have fins, kind of like you see on a V-twin on a Harley or something. There's one right now. You'll actually just see the fins around the cylinders, and that's how it's evacuating heat. But the oil is the secondary method of cooling. So there's probably, I think, 11 liters of oil in this car. I've got a little bit of a bigger oil cooler up front. And what happens is it's a dry sump system, so you've got a reservoir, you've got a pump. That pump is pumping oil through the engine. And then after a certain temperature, which you can monitor over here, a thermostat over by the right rear wheel will open up, and then there's feed and return lines up the passenger side of the car to an oil cooler, kind of like a radiator, and it goes through that and allows air to pass through. Obviously we're driving, and then it'll feed cooler oil back to the engine. So that's just an aid. It's not the primary method of cooling. But that does mean that because there's so much oil, it takes a little while to warm these cars up. So you don't just jump in an air-cooled 911 and drive hard. They operate in a pretty wide temperature range. So you do want to make sure that you're letting all those components get to the appropriate temperature so they've expanded. Cars do take a little bit of effort to get used to when you first jump in. They're not necessarily hard to drive, but they're not natural if you're used to a typical front engine sports car. Part of it is just the driving surfaces, operation of the pedals and everything, because it's an interesting seating position. It's actually really nice and low, especially with these Recaros, but the pedals, they're not just like hung like a normal pedal where you push it in. They're actually mounted in the floor, so the pedals move forward and backwards in kind of this arcing motion. In addition to that, the throttle pedal is pretty far in, so it's actually fairly difficult to heel-toe downshift in this car unless you're really deep in the brakes. And I failed to mention earlier when I talked about the turbo wheels, it actually has the turbo brakes as well. So the stopping power on this particular car is pretty extreme. Couple that with the R888Rs, and yeah, this thing will come down in a hurry. This generation is just a G body. So a lot of people look at this and say, oh, you have a 930. The 930, there we go. The 930 designation, see, the binaural audio makes that so much better. The 930 designation is specifically for turbos. So even though it's basically the same thing but a wide body, 930 refers to the turbo model and not the Carrera. So it's kind of frustrating because people want to say like, oh, what generation? And I can't say, oh, it's a 964 or a 993. I'm just saying it's a 911. That's what it is. best thing about these old cars is that they're light and not powerful. And I think that goes overlooked a lot today, because most cars today are pretty heavy. They have to be with all the safety gear and architecture. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to roll this car. I'd much rather be in a terrible accident like a Civic Type R. Those are like fortresses. But the idea that you can kind of make so much fun out of 220 horsepower is amazing. And it's because these cars weigh, you know, like 2,700 pounds that you can do that. And as I've grown older, I think I've found more and more that I get more of a kick out of driving slower cars fast instead of driving fast cars below their limits, you know? So coming up is a railroad track that people used to try to jump in high school. And as you can see, this angle, you really could get air on this. Jeez, man. Trophy Borough, where are you at? The coolest thing about these old air-cooled cars is they can be ultra extreme, way further than this car is built, or they can just be like classy daily drivers. These are really easy to enjoy. They don't have any power steering, so, you know, but the front end is so light because there's no engine there that it's pretty easy to drive. The only time you ever notice that it doesn't have power steering is when you're like at a dead stop or you're like parallel parking. But, you know, you just get the car to move a little bit and it frees right up. End this video over at my friend's shop. We're not going to go in due to the pandemic, but this is where my M3 got tuned actually. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Lots more content on this car over on my channel, Tedward Drives, and we'll do more on Winding Road with it as well. I just kind of wanted to dust off the cobwebs and take it for a little rip. It's going to be rainy the next few days, and it's looking good. I wanted at least somebody to see it.